Hello and welcome into Off the Bench. It is Tuesday, day following the national championship. The Indiana Hoosiers, best turnaround in college sports history. One of the best stories I've ever seen in college sports history. Man, that was electrifying. Kudos to everyone that has always told me how great college football is, because that was awesome last night. What an awesome game that truly was, and I'm happy. I've told this story before. My college roommate was a diehard Hoosier fan. He was at the game last night. It's part of the reason that I sometimes root for IU basketball. And I'm happy for all the Indiana fans. There's also a pocket of, I guess, Chicago fans that are, just having the time of their life between what the Cubs did, what the Bears did, and then I know a pocket of them are Indiana alum. So really awesome to see. I'm Reed Mouse. We got a great show for you today. We are moving up mailbag to today. The reason being, tomorrow we are going to have on Luke Brenneman, who was down there at the national championship. So we're going to have Luke Brenneman on tomorrow to talk about his experience down there, about the Indiana Hoosiers. We got a guest on this Thursday lined up that are going to be talking some NL Central baseball, talking about another team here in the NL Central. I'm not going to spoil what the team is.
Cardinals?
I think it might surprise you who we're going to be talking about on Thursday with a guest. And then we're probably going to have a guest on this Friday, probably talking Bearcats, especially if they can do something exciting tomorrow against the Arizona Wildcats. As I mentioned, Reed Mouse, as always, joined by Stone Shields, your Hoosiers. I think he said Hoosiers about 15 times before we started the show in the pre-show meeting. But Stone, how are you on this lovely Tuesday?
Doing great. Lots to discuss on the show. Yeah, I'm happy Mailbag's getting moved up. It's our favorite segment of the week, and we get to do it here on a Tuesday. We got lots of esteemed Hoosier alums that have been in our DMs, sending us emails all over the place. So super excited about that.
Some esteemed some of them aren't Hoosier alums.
Yes.
Some are just connected to the school in one way or another. But yeah, a lot of Hoosier fans in our DMs, in our mailbag. That we're really excited to talk about that. I also have to control myself, if I'm being honest, because the national or the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, is announced tonight. And if I wanted to, I could rant for an hour plus on just the Hall of Fame, who should get in, who shouldn't get in. But I realize that it was a shocking revelation to me. But it was a revelation a few years ago that no one else cares about that other than me. and some old guys. As I was just reminded of, I remember I had an argument with Tom and Marty about Joe Mauer a few years ago. That was a fun one. But we got a great show. We're going to start off talking about the national championship. And like I said, Stone, shout out to you, because you've been trying to get me to watch college football in a great respect for a while. And that game last night was absolutely amazing. Is this the best college football playoffs since they started all the way back in 2014?
I think so. You have obviously a larger sample size because the more games now the past 2 years. Clearly this year was better than last year. Last year there was a couple of good games. That Arizona State-Texas one was good. I think this year clearly takes the cake. And the 1 year, the Final Four of Baker against Georgia at the Rose Bowl. That was a crazy game, but yeah, start to finish.
The first one was good. 24, like Ohio State doing that. Like, I know I hate Ohio State, but like that was a fun college football play. Maybe I'm just remembering that differently because I was in Northern Ohio around a bunch of Ohio State fans, and they seemed to think that was electrifying. But this one, it certainly was better than last year, the first year of the expanded playoff. And part of the reason that it was so great was just because the field finally, like the sport is, we're seeing equity. We're seeing teams spread out the wealth of players. We don't see Georgia with, if they have the best and the second best tackles in the country, they also have the fourth and the fifth best too, that are just waiting in the wings because they can't transfer away. They can't go to other schools. It's undoubtedly amazing. And also these schools like Ole Miss, they lose a game, they don't have to worry about not making the playoffs. Like, their season is still intact. So all in all, it's just it's making for a better sport. And as someone told me when they expanded the playoffs, a big college football fan, they're like, don't try to make college football the NFL. It's not the NFL, which is fair. But also, if you're going to mold yourself after the NFL, like there's worse places to mold yourself after if you're a sports league or a sports organization than the NFL, who seems to be firing on all cylinders. All right, the Indiana Hoosiers. I made a big stink, or a big what to do, as I just became enamored with what Kirk Cignetti has been able to do at Indiana. And I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago when he made it to the championship, that there will be some detractors saying, well, he can't do this. He's only doing this because of NIL and the transfer portal, which is true, but also it doesn't matter. What we saw Indiana do today, or last night, to complete the undefeated season, to pretty much, they dominated almost every game this season. They play 15 of them. They dominated almost every single game. After being the worst program in the history of the sport. It is absolutely incredible. And it capped off what I think is truly the best college sports story that I can remember in my lifetime. What Indiana did, there's a reason you get on Facebook, you get on Twitter, and they're like, make the movie. Because this is a movie type of story. You couldn't write one up better. Wonder what they're going to name. They'll call it Hoosiers.
Yeah.
It's an incredible. It truly is. It's the best story, because this is a sport that has been dominated by the same 5-10 teams, and that's being generous, saying 10. It's been dominated by the same people year in and year out. And to see this Indiana team, fueled by Mark Cuban, John Mellencamp's, and a bunch of donors' money, and a grumpy, grizzled veteran of a coach, Kirk Cignetti, with just a roster full of grown men, took the transfer portal and brought in 22, 23-year-olds, and Fernando Mendoza, who is a gamer. It's hard not to root for that guy. And to turn this into a national championship, I can't think of a better story. I cannot think. The reason we like college sports is because we like the pomp, the circumstance. We like people showing up in Miami's home city, in Miami's home stadium. I mean, just majority Indiana fans. They go down there. They rile up an entire alumni base. As I mentioned, one of my best friends down there. Just a diehard Hoosier fan. Had to get there. For a fan base that probably didn't ever think about their football team. And there's no reason to think that Kirk Cignetti can't turn this thing into a perennial powerhouse. There's absolutely no reason to believe that. And it's just really inspiring to see. It is inspiring to see. We made fun of him. Google me. Going in, you're the Indiana's head coach. Google you? Are you kidding me? But he is backed it up. Can you think of a college sports story, Stone, that rivals what Indiana has done this year?
No, not at all. This is all-time stuff. And you're saying college sports. I'll take it a step further. This is one of the best sports turnarounds, period. I mean, this is unbelievable. Yeah, there's a huge alumni base. There's a lot of people that went to Indiana, but you take a look at some of their games, after the Allen era, like not very many people were there showing up, right? Not very many people were buying in to Kirk Cignetti. And it's not like he did this in 5 or 6 years. Like, this happened basically overnight. This is year two. And he's holding the trophy at the end of the year, which is unbelievable. So, yeah, I think a lot of people laughed at him when he was making those comments. Like, all right, well, who's this guy think he is? And then his response was, okay, I'll just dominate everybody in the sport. So he deserves his flowers. It's unbelievable. And in this day and age, I think this is going to be, Indiana's going to be a threat for a while. I don't think this is a one-off. I'm not going to say they're going to rattle off a bunch of national titles, but they're going to be in the mix for the foreseeable future.
It's interesting to see, because I think that this is going to be a good case study. I think this is going to be, and I'm with you, that I think they're going to continue to play. I don't know if they can winning a championship so hard, especially when the field is getting more and more evened out. Like in years past, like you win a championship, it's easy to keep that ball rolling. Nick Saban is an unbelievable coach. Now, he went to one of the most historic programs in the history of the sport. And I see people in the chat going like, Nick Saban turned it around. I think they won 10 games like 2 years before Nick Saban, got there. It's easy to keep that ball rolling, right? Once you get it going, the pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, you start winning. It's easier to keep that going, that momentum. It's going to be a little harder now. And the reason that I think that this has the ramifications to be a call to action for all these different schools is these schools that have been on the outside, that either have a good alumni base, that have a lot of money in their alumni, their donor base. This is a call to action to see we could be Indiana. We can do this. It's no longer when NIL came out, we could say like, oh, if one team just throws a bunch of money, they can turn into a champion. But you hadn't seen it yet. You hadn't seen it matriculate into something tangible, into a team that has won a championship. You hadn't seen that. Now you can look around and your Texas Tech, your Vanderbilt. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of money flowing around in Nashville. They just had a great year. If you're a Vanderbilt, like, why can't we be Indiana? If you're Rutgers near New York City, why can't we be Indiana? This is going to be a call to action for donors across the nation, which will make this even a more competitive field. Because if in the NIL, the first 5 years of it, we just saw, Bama wins again, Georgia wins again, Ohio State wins, Michigan wins, even at a school like Texas wins. It'd be harder to be that school on the outside. If you're UCLA going like, hey, we could spend some money on this and we can really turn this thing around. But now you've seen it from the worst team statistically in the history of the sport in the Indiana Hoosiers to turn into an undefeated national champion. One of the likes of, we're talking about, could they beat the 2019 LSU Tigers, which a lot of us thought we'd never say. That's how amazing this year was for Indiana. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where this sport goes going forward. To see if there's any other of these small schools that are like, dude, we can be Indiana. We can do this too. Which will in turn make it more competitive, which in turn will make the sport more competitive and equal out into a better viewing experience, because the games aren't always going to be 50-7 as they've been for the first 29 years of my life. All right, let's talk about the Red Hawks. We had been asking, and it finally happened. Travis Steele, the Red Hawks with one of the best slogans that I've ever seen, rank us or play us. Well, the Associated Press came in and they said, hey, you're top 25. And we mentioned it. Why are they so apprehensive to put this team in the top 25? Well, they finally threw them a bone. And now it's up to the Miami Red Hawks to wear that badge. You've got the little number next to your name. Now you got to live up to it, as if they haven't already. But now there's a little extra stank on your team. Kent State tonight, where the Red Hawks play. Did you see this? They're giving out free beer to the first 500 students who show up to the game tonight.
Wow. No, I did not see that.
To add a little spice into that game for Kent State versus Miami. And that's what mid-major basketball is all about, because that is incredible. 500, I think it's like a free Bud Light for the first 500 students that show up today. I hope they're camping out up there at Kent where it's negative 10 degrees for their one singular Bud Light that they'll get free for the game tonight. I think our very own Nick Kirby's going to the game tonight. So good luck to the Red Hawks as they try to live up to their top 25 status. It's awesome to see them in national media. It's awesome to see Wally Zerbiak and Scott Van Pelt and all these guys talk about the Miami Red Hawks as a true story. And where we let off the show talking about the Indiana Hoosiers, one of the best stories I've ever seen in college sports. I hope the Red Hawks continue their beautiful story this year and keep it exciting. Get into February undefeated and it'll start getting really exciting if it hasn't already. Stone, it's 10:22 here on a Tuesday, and I think we've got some mailbags. So let's break into the mailbag without further ado.
All right, here we go. First mailbag question comes in from Mark Cuban.
Oh, wow.
Big-time donor, Hoosier alum, and this is what he has to say. He said, Robert Saleh is taking the head coaching job of the Tennessee Titans. Does this surprise you?
Does it surprise me that Robert Saleh got a job? No, of course not. Robert Saleh was as highly regarded as a head coach or as a DC as we've seen in this league before he took that Jets job. And as we've come to find out, if we hadn't known it already, the Jets job is a circus and has been throughout pretty much the entire run of the New York Jets. As I think it was Dylan or Cole Sprouse that once famously said in Big Daddy, the gosh darn Jets. Because Robert Saleh goes away, and what happens? Banged up team, goes to 49ers, and he gets them in the divisional round, despite having to deal with an electromagnetic field in their practice facility. Is it surprising that Robert Saleh got a head coaching job again after failing miserably in New York? No, it's not, because he deserved one. He's a really good head coach. Is it surprising that he took the Tennessee Titans job? I think, yeah. I think it is. Robert Saleh, he's not Mike Tomlin. He's not John Harbaugh. But he would have had his pick at a couple different jobs. He could have been more selective. He's not on his last run as a coach, or at least he wouldn't be. But if he fails here in Tennessee, it will be his last run. You get at the most 2 jobs. Most coaches only get 1 head coaching job, and if you don't make it work, you don't make it work, and that's the end of it all. Taking the Tennessee job is striking. I know they've got Cam Ward, who some people are excited about. I haven't seen it yet. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. I haven't seen it yet. But the Titans, through the last 20 years, have kind of been, other than when Mike Vrabel, and we've seen what he's done in year 1 up in New England, outside of his run there, they've kind of been a dumpster fire. And taking that job where it doesn't have a whole lot of bright spot, it's not like Cam Ward is a surefire thing, and hitching your wagon to him, could be your final head coaching job, seems interesting. Now, there is some benefits of taking, these smaller teams. Like say what you want about the Cincinnati Bengals. A major proponent of the Bengals job is you're going to get runway and you're going to get a lot of say into what goes on in your team. I don't know if that's necessarily the case from the Tennessee Titans. I mean, you read the stories, their ownership does have their fingers in the team quite a bit. It's part of the reason that Vrabel was out. So yeah, I think it's surprising that Robert Saleh took this job, because I think he certainly could have got a better one. And I haven't thought too deeply about ranking the jobs available or that are still around, but the Titans were near the bottom. It's not quite Cleveland Browns, but it's near the bottom. Did it surprise you that Robert Saleh took this job?
I think the Titans job is a little bit better than what you're thinking.
Okay.
There's a couple reasons why. They have the top 5 pick in the draft. They have the 4th overall pick. Here's the big one. They have the most cap space out of any team in the National Football League entering this offseason at $93 million. So that's a huge draw. And on top of that, they've got a new stadium coming in 2027. And on top of that, you're living in Nashville, which is a booming city and really just a great place to live in the United States. So I think there is some draw to the Titans job. And, if you can find something with Cam Ward, you got him for cheap for a few more years. So I think that could be intriguing there as well. It's not, I think in his mind, he was like, okay, I'm not going to get the Raven job and then probably not going to get the Bill job either. And then from there, like if you're comparing the Titans to the Cardinals, I think 100% you take the Tennessee Titans over the Arizona Cardinals. 100% you take the Tennessee Titans over the Cleveland Browns. So I do think there's some intriguing elements to the job. I agree with you. He deserves another job. The mess in New York, that nobody was succeeding there. You could put, Sean McVay there, and I don't know if it looks a heck of a lot better than what it does. It's just the Jets. It's a complete mess. He deserved another shot, and I think that's kind of what the Titans need. They need someone, an alpha, to come in and really take the bull by the horns, be a culture setter and a tone builder, and they've got a couple of guys to build around. We floated the idea about the Bengals trading for Jeffrey Simmons. That's not going to happen, but I do think there was a team that, I think there was a possibility that the Titans could trade Jeffrey Simmons. I think if Saleh's coming in, he's like, okay, I got to have my guy Jeffrey Simmons there in the middle of that defense. I got Cam Ward, and then we'll build around those guys. But with the cap space that they have going into this offseason, the top 5 pick, and the new stadium coming in 27, and you're living in Nashville. And that division, I understand the Texans and Jaguars had a great year, but that feels kind of attainable, certainly more so attainable than the NFC West. So I think it's a little bit of a better job than what maybe some people think. So I wasn't that surprised that he took it.
Do you think I mean, maybe this is the most obvious statement ever. But by Robert Saleh taking this job, he is, and it's open in interpretation here, but he's saying, I believe in Cam Ward. Because
Yes.
why else would you take that
Correct.
job unless you've got to be precise.
Yeah.
They hitch their wagon to these quarterbacks. He's saying, I believe in Cam Ward. I think I can win there.
Yeah.
In that division's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Like we're not – a few years ago, you take it and you're like, you got a young quarterback. Division's not that good. Listen, the Texans, that defense ain't going anywhere. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going anywhere. Indianapolis Colts, I mean, they're 8-1 before it all falls down. Like, that's a tough division, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough job. I am surprised that Robert Saleh. And you are right. It's certainly better than the Browns job. I would argue, I think you can make a case that it's on par with the Cardinals job. It's got a quarterback, but what happens if the quarterback's not any good? I know the Cardinals have Kyler Murray, but I think you can pretty much dump it out and you can kind of build it in your own image from that point forward. And yeah, Nashville's a great place to say. I would say so is Phoenix. I don't know. It surprised me. I thought he'd be a little choosier, but by, as we're just talking through this, but by him taking that, he's saying, I believe in Cam Ward. I think I'm going to win here with Cam Ward, and he's hitching his wagon to him. So
$93 million in cap space.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Okay, fair enough. All right, next mailbag.
All right, here we go. Mailbag number 2. Off the bench. A lot of talk being brought up regarding Josh Allen. He fell in the divisional round. He is great, and that is 100% undisputed. But what is fair in talking about his postseason performances? And that comes in from Indiana alum Trace Jackson Davis.
I loved TJD. He's my favorite college basketball player I think I've ever watched.
Really?
I swear, I love TJD. Which there was nothing artistic about his game. He was a 6'10" center. You just tossed him the ball, and he would go. Those games between TJD and Zach Edey, college basketball, I eat it. As much as I hate college football, or at least talk bad about college football, I eat up college basketball. It's great. Trace Jackson Davis wants to know what is fair when evaluating Josh Allen's career in the postseason. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Josh Allen, throughout his career in the postseason, he's now been, 6 times? Is that his 7th trip, or is that his 6th trip?
One or the other.
He has been fantastic. He truly has. Just a week ago, we were talking about how he was Superman against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has been otherworldly. So just because one game in Denver, are you going to take away all of that? But I'll say this. I don't think it's ever been a guy that talented, a guy that has won an MVP, that has been thought of as elite for as long as Josh Allen has been. And you've seen, I know you guys have seen this, but the Bills in the last 6 years have had the most wins, scored the most points, had the greatest point differential in the league. And they've been to the AFC Championship game twice and have been unable to win it. And you can sit here and you can go, yeah, well, his team wasn't very good this year, which is true. You can sit and you can go, yeah, but he lost to Patrick Mahomes 4 times. Reed, even you say Patrick Mahomes might go down as the greatest, if not the second greatest quarterback to ever live, which is true. And then you could say, well, and then the other game is he was taking on a red-hot Joe Burrow. Like, he's got it. All I'm saying is when your team has been as successful as the Bills have been over the last 6 years, as I mentioned, they've had the most wins, they've scored the most points, they've had the greatest point differential. When you're playing in the postseason, as he was this year, and you're the best quarterback in the postseason in a sport that has been ruled by the better quarterback wins. That's been the predominating factor over the last decade. When that's the case, I expect you to get into the Super Bowl at least once. You don't get to lose to Patrick Mahomes 4 times and keep saying, well, yeah, we're playing Patrick Mahomes. You don't get to lose to Joe Burrow at home. You don't get to lose to the Denver Broncos on the road in overtime, especially when in a few instances you had the ball with a chance to win in overtime. Josh Allen is great. He is one of the most fun players I've ever had the enjoyment or the pleasure to watch play football. Josh Allen, I think, is the greatest mobile quarterback the sport has ever seen. If you ask me if I could start a franchise right now with any quarterback in the league, I'd pick Josh Allen. But I also don't think that. And he's also been statistically one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the history. But he just hasn't gotten over that hump. And I don't think I'm being overly critical when I say that. So what is fair? When grading Josh Allen's postseason success, you can say everything that I just said. He's been great. He's gone up against juggernauts of the sport. And this year his team wasn't all that good around him. But point blank, he's the first quarterback that we've ever seen have as much success as he's had to not make the Super Bowl. Every team that has made the postseason 6 straight years, I think I saw this, has won a Super Bowl. Won a Super Bowl. And he hasn't even been there. Your thoughts on Trace Jackson Davis question?
It's kind of a vague question from Trace, if I'm being completely honest here. But I agree with a lot of what you said. But I like he's about to turn 30 years old, right? He's still got a lot of great football ahead of him. And, I haven't even been known as some Josh Allen defender, but I think some of the dialogue here is ridiculous. Like, he's not retiring. He's got plenty of more opportunities. He's going to continue to make the playoffs. Look at John Elway. He didn't crack through until the end of his career. Look at Matthew Stafford, tail end of his career before he cracked through. He's got some time, and Josh Allen absolutely will hoist the Lombardi Trophy at some day. Let's not act like he's got Tom Brady's teams here. Let's not act like he's got Tom Brady's defenses here. That defense for the Buffalo Bills is not good. They had no business beating the Jacksonville Jaguars in that game, and due to Josh Allen's brilliance, they were able to do it. Say it again?
You're being 100% true. This is all true.
Yeah. So I people are getting a little carried away with it. I understand, right? He hasn't won one yet, and you look at his talent, and you go, how in the world is that possible? It takes a lot to win a World Series. Or a World Series. It takes a lot to win a Super Bowl, right? It's a team game. There's a lot of pieces and a lot of chips that need to fall in your way in order for that to happen. And it just hasn't happened for him yet. But at some point, it is going to happen. He is way too talented for it not to happen. And, you talk about, the quarterback and how that is, the deciding factor in a lot of these games. I agree, but so is the head coach. And there's a reason why he's out the door. He's won a ton of games, one of the highest, top 15 highest win percentage in the history of the NFL. He's on his way out the door. So this is a huge hire for Bean and Buffalo and those guys in Western New York to make sure they figure out who's going to be the head coach here for this is, he's got a few more years left in his prime before I still think he can be a good quarterback. But when he's 36, 37, you're not going to see him run around the way he's running around right now. But at some point, he's going to get it figured out. I don't think he's had a couple of teams there when they lost to Mahomes that could have won it. But this year's team was not a Super Bowl team.
No, but we also sat here and we talked about them as like, if they win it, it wouldn't surprise us because they do have Josh Allen because that's how great Josh Allen is. So you could sit here and after the fact say, oh, that team wasn't any good. But we also sat here and said like they might win the Super Bowl because of Josh Allen. And maybe that's too unfair to put on his shoulders. Everything you said was 100% correct. And you mentioned some of the, like John Elway, some of these guys, Matt Stafford, that did it late in their career. And because of how great Josh Allen is and has been, if he holds up the Lombardi Trophy at any point in his career, all of this hogwash that I'm talking about right now will go by the wayside. Like, we won't even remember talking about this. But in this moment, when you lose to Bo Nix with a chance to win in overtime, I don't think it's unfair to criticize Josh Allen, who, once again, has been on, for the past 6 years, a team that's no one's won more games than the Bills. No one's scored more points than the Bills. No one's dominated teams quite like the Bills and been unable to make the Super Bowl. I don't think I'm being overly critical. It can all go by the wayside if they win it next year or in 5 years or at any point in his career, as you mentioned, I hold the opinion that, yes, he will hold a Lombardi trophy at some point because we've never seen a quarterback this good not win one. Remember Marino, right? That's it. That's it. We've never seen a quarterback this good not win a Super Bowl other than Marino. So we will see. But I don't think I'm being overly critical. And it can all go by the wayside. Next question.
All right, here we go. OTB. Dan Pitcher is considering taking other jobs, not just a head coach, but as an OC. What happens with the Bengals OC job then? And this comes in from Philadelphia Philly, Kyle Schwarber.
You mean Chicago Cub? You mean, or is as he was most famously a Washington National at one time. Schwartz. I don't know if you know this, but Schwarber is from Middletown. He played linebacker. He was an all-state linebacker.
Was he a Reds fan growing up?
He was. He was an all-state linebacker for the Middies, too. And he certainly looks like one. Dan Pitcher is considering taking out – he's interviewed for some head coaching jobs, which I think surprised us. We're like, he doesn't even call plays here in town. Now he's getting the opportunity with Zac Taylor's blessing to apply or put his name in his hat in the ring for OC jobs where he will get to call plays with the aspirations, presumably, to be a head coach someday. I hope for Dan Pitcher's career that he gets those opportunities. I hope for everyone to progress in their career. What happens to the Bengals OC once Dan Pitcher is whisked away, if he is whisked away? And I saw a Paul Dehner clip yesterday, so I'm just going to take it as a opinion because it's the right one. We know what's going to happen. We're going to hire Brian Callahan. He was formerly the OC before he took that Tennessee Titans job that Robert Saleh was so eager to take. And I'm going to try my best to be fair and not do the blow-up Reed thing about everything that the Bengals do when it comes to this coaching staff, because I am of the opinion that the Bengals are going to be fine. I think they're going to be good next year. I think things are lined up too evenly for them not to be good. But I'm so effing frustrated because if Dan Pitcher takes this job, Brian Callahan will be the OC of the Bengals. I am so effing frustrated of this insular silo of an organization. Everything is a hiring from within, or it's a guy. We get rid of Lou Anarumo. What do? We hire the linebackers coach from a few years ago. Well, Brian Callahan takes a head coaching job somewhere. We hire the quarterbacks coach to be the OC. All right, he's going to go get a new job. Oh, we'll just bring back Brian Callahan because he's without a job. It's not a terrible move. It's not, because Brian Callahan and Zac Taylor in the same room, they had a lot of success. But it's so frustrating, and I've mentioned this before, that getting a perspective from the outside is at the utmost importance for this Bengals team. Because clearly the way that they are operating is not working at a high enough level. They've got to have someone in there to just say, I think we should do things a little differently. I think we should do things like this. And I know that it's nitpicking when talking about this offense, which has been great. It's been great. But we know how much say these coaches have over the entire roster construction, over the entire organization. So getting someone in there that's just seen the sport in a different lens is all I'm asking for. And once again, I'm setting myself up to be disappointed. Because what will happen is Dan Pitcher, if he gets another job, will take it and will hire Brian Callahan. And I'll have to sit here and go, oh, yippee, or the band's back together. It's a war of attrition is all it is, Stone. It's a war of attrition because it's the same shit year after year after year. And I'm just tired of it.
Yeah.
You're in favor of this move, no?
Yeah, I am. We'll spend a whole segment on it at 11 o'clock. But, look, Pitch is looking at this going, all right, I'm involved here. Pitch has been with the team for a long time. Remember, he was a Marvin guy, and he stayed through the Taylor era. works his way up. He was doing film stuff or whatever that role was called, and then eventually quarterback coach. Now he's the OC. At some point, Dan Pitcher is going to be a head coach in the National Football League. At some point, I almost guarantee it. Now he's looking at it going, well, I'm not calling the plays here, and Tampa is a very intriguing spot. And if you remember, Pitt's interviewed for the Tampa job last year as well, and some would say, it's a bit of a risk leaving Joe Burrow, and that's fair. But let's look at the previous coordinators for Tampa Bay, right? I mean, Dave Canales, he's a head coach. Liam Cohen, he's a head coach. You got Baker Mayfield, Ibuka, Evans, Godwin. Like, that is a very intriguing job if you're an OC. And if he were to take that job, I think eventually he definitely would be a head coach as well. I still think he'd be a head coach even if he stays here in Cincinnati. But their whole thing's continuity, right? And I think the biggest thing that comes to mind, and I've been saying this about the Patriots, is they're in a great spot because Vrabes, McDaniels, May aren't going anywhere. They don't have to worry about Josh McDaniels leaving. He's going to be the OC for as long as he wants to because he's tried the head coach thing before, and it was a total disaster. Brian Callahan's not one of those guys. We talk about Bob Saleh, him getting another chance. Callahan's not getting another crack at this thing. He's a one and done as far as the head coach goes. So if he comes back here, he's here for the long haul, and I think that would be positive for Cincinnati, and we all know the type of success that him, Zac Taylor, and Joe Burrow have had working together. So I think it would be a no-brainer decision. I get it. You want to bring in a Brian Daboll, that's great. He's here for a year, and then he's gone. Right? If you bring back Callahan, you're running back this operation for quite some time, and that's worked a lot in the past, and all your playoff wins Brian Callahan.
Bringing in a new OC, yeah, he might have success and move on. But I don't want to shortchange the impact that one voice or one perspective can have on changing this organization for the better. And that won't happen with Brian Callahan. Next question.
All right. Here we go. With both the Ravens and Bills jobs open, which do you think is a better job to land as a head coach? And that comes in from John Cougar Mellencamp.
Little pink houses. Which do I think is the better job? That's a really hard question. Who's the better quarterback? That's not a hard question. Josh Allen's the better quarterback than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson plays a style of football that's not going to age well. At least it hasn't aged well in the history. And Josh plays a similar style. He's just bigger. He's just bigger and stronger, and we've seen Big Ben, who wasn't as mobile as Josh, but we've seen Big Ben take a lot of hits over the career. And like when he was 40, he wasn't that great, but he played well into his 30s. I think... And the reason this is such a tough question is because the Ravens are clearly ran better than the Bills. I don't think you could argue that. I don't think when it comes to roster construction, like the Ravens have a better roster right now. But Josh Allen's so much better. I keep flip-flopping on my head before I pull the trigger on the answer. But I'll say this. If I want to be the head coach and you give me both openings, I think I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens.
Whoa.
And I think it's just because I very much believe in that organization. It's been a great organization for 25 years. It's not completely reliant on Superman. Lamar Jackson's great, too, on top of that. To where, like, it feels like Lamar Jackson is the cherry on top of what makes the Ravens' job so attractive. When the whole entree is Josh Allen for Buffalo.
Yeah.
So I think I'll take Ravens because I could find myself having more long-term success there. And as we've seen, they've got a little more job security there. Not that Sean McDermott didn't deserve job security, but I don't know. I think I'm taking the Ravens. I don't feel strongly about it either way. I think it's a really good question. What about you, Stone?
Yeah, it's a good argument. I think from an organizational perspective and a personnel perspective, clearly Baltimore has a better feel for personnel, scouting, stuff like that. But I just think Josh Allen outweighs that. I mean, that dude is unbelievable, obviously. And, Baltimore, I think the world of Lamar Jackson, he's terrific. But has he regressed a little bit the past couple of years? I know he gets banged up a lot too. Certainly we're familiar with that here in Cincinnati. But Josh Allen doesn't miss a snap. He's out there consistently. And what he's able to do is unbelievable. Like, if you put Tua or even like C.J. Stroud on the Bills, like, they win like 4 or 5 games with this team that they have right now. So if you can just get some pieces around him, give him a weapon, help out a little bit on defense, get a little bit younger. Like, the Buffalo job is just so incredibly attractive with Josh Allen. And, it's not like they've won a couple of – I get there's a lot of pressure to, perform with Josh Allen, but it's not like you need to continue winning Super Bowls. Like, that's not what they're doing. Like, you just need to get to the Super Bowl. And with Josh Allen, that's a lot easier said than with another quarterback. So I just think the Bills' job with Josh Allen in place is just incredibly, incredibly attractive.
If you were after legacy, too, like if legacy is part of your motive, it'd be hard to find a way to build a better legacy than to bringing the Super Bowl to the Bills. Like, that would be is there any job that you could think of that would be more impactful of bringing one home? Vikings getting one? The Lions, if the Lions or the Browns, if you win one with the Lions or the Browns, you're thought of a little bit higher. But, like, the Bills, I mean, they've been hungry for that. It's their own. They've got 2 professional sports teams in town, and one of them's the Bills. And if legacy is what you're after, then yes, you go after the Bills job. It's a hard question. Both are both are the best jobs that have been available in years. So, congrats to whoever gets those 2 jobs. All right.
You think Harbaugh is kicking himself at all?
About taking the Giants job? No. No, I do not.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question that's just, I thought of it last night?
Yeah.
And it's going to be silly, but you think the Bills call Cignetti?
Well, you said it yesterday, Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
I'd call him.
How would that work? Did the Bills have to buy out of that contract, or because he's going to a different, I don't know how that all works. I don't know how that contract works, and I'm not even going to pretend to act like
I don't think they call Cignetti, though. I mean, he doesn't seem like a pro guy at all, not even a little bit. Whereas Marcus Freeman, you could totally see it. But, yeah, they're not. Cignetti, look, he just won the title.
But yeah, what if he did it and he's just like, you know what, let's try something new.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you, I guess, but
yeah.
No.
All right,
Like
I said, it was silly. It was silly, but
I respect
Marcus
you bringing
Freeman makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Marcus Freeman makes a lot of sense. For everyone that is arguing that the Bills should hire Bill Belichick, if you mean that and you're not just saying it to get clicks, quit your job. Next question.
All right, here we go. The Baseball Hall of Fame is going to be released today. Who do you think will be admitted into Cooperstown this July? That comes in from Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight, big Cooperstown fan. Listen, guys, I love the Hall of Fame vote. I love it. I've drawn a little away from it in years past, but I'm still right there in the thick of it. As I mentioned, I could do this for 3 hours in a row. Just let me go. So who do I think will be admitted into the Hall of Fame this year? I think Carlos Beltran will make the Hall of Fame, as he absolutely should. He got 70% of the vote last year. You have to get 75%. I think Carlos Beltran will absolutely get in this year. The names that are a little more interesting are guys like Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones, 400 home runs, is the best defensive center fielder the sport has ever seen. Did he drop off after he got into his 30s and got fat? Yeah. But he was the best center fielder the sport has ever seen. He hit 400-plus home runs. Andrew Jones is absolutely a Hall of Famer. And for those, there's these guys, they call him Small Hall. They only like to – guys like only Derek Jeter should get in. Only guys like Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, guys with legacy, have the counting stats, have all this stuff, and to make it harder to get in, the Hall of Fame has never been that. It has never been that. Go look up the names and the guys that got in the Hall of Fame when it started. Go look up a guy named Ray Schalk. They let what's Candy Cummins, the guy that invented the curveball. They just let a guy because he invented a pitch in the Hall of Fame. Bruce Suter's in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of bad Hall of Famers, or at least not worthy Hall of Famers to this day. So if you're like Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran aren't Hall of Famers. Carlos Beltran, 435 home runs, switch hitter, played in the league, World Series winner. Carlos Beltran was great. Andrew Jones should absolutely get in. And I'm in favor of the steroids guys. If we're telling the story of baseball, how can you tell it without Alex Rodriguez? Alex Rodriguez, I think, is the greatest infielder the sport has ever seen. 700 home runs, 3,000 hits. He had 500 home runs before he turned 30. Let Barry Bonds in. Let Roger Clemens. Let Kurt Schilling in. The only reason he's not in is because of his politics, which is insane to say. It's insane to say that out loud. He's not in because he thinks differently about how the way the country should be ran. But yeah, I think Carlos Beltran will get in. I'll be intrigued to see if Andrew Jones gets in. Guys that are intriguing is like a Chase Utley who's nowhere near it. How much stink does a guy like, I don't know, Felix Hernandez and Bobby Abreu, who Bobby Abreu had a better career than you remember. He's probably not a Hall of Famer, but he had a better career than you remember. Yeah. Beltran will 100% get in. Not 100%. 95% sure he'll get in. And then I think Chase Utley or Andrew Jones will be closer, up and around the 70. But this is his last year, I believe, on the ballot. So good luck to those guys. I think that find out this afternoon. Is there any guy on this? I'm looking at the roster or the name right now that'll be surprising that gets a vote. We're talking about guys like David Wright will get some votes. He shouldn't be in, but other than that, no, not really. Hunter Pence might get a vote. That'd be interesting. But yeah, that's my nerding out. Thanks for letting me nerd out for about 5-10 minutes. Do you think Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer?
Well, real quickly, how many finalists are there? And then you have to get like a certain percentage of the vote, right?
You have to get 75% of the vote.
Okay.
You got 10 years to do it. The voters are only allowed voting for 10 people per year.
Okay.
There's about 450 of them. The list is, and it's just notable to be named on the list. There's about 30 guys on the list, on the finalist.
Yeah.
And anyone, if you get over 5%, if you retain 5% of the vote,
yeah,
you get to be on the list next year until your time is up.
Yeah. Throw me at, you don't have to go through all 30 of them.
Oh, we'll go through them all.
Okay. All right. I think David Wright's Hall of Famer.
Oh, David Wright's not a Hall of Famer. I think he'll get more votes than people are. All right, I'm gonna throw names at you. And you just tell me yes or no, then I'll do the same thing, and then we'll do this for the next 5 minutes, I guess. Bobby Abreu.
No.
I agree. No. Carlos Beltran.
Yes.
Yes. Ryan Braun.
Ooh. Yeah.
No. And if the part of the reason he wasn't there anyways, but also the steroid, like if we're not
you were in favor of the
I'm in
juicers.
favor of steroids. I'm saying he won't get in, and he doesn't deserve to get in, but he won't get in. If he was even valuable enough to get in, he wouldn't get in because of steroids. Also, Aaron Rodgers still owes his 2011 salary to charity or whatever he said he was going to donate if Ryan Braun was guilty of taking steroids.
Okay.
Mark Burley.
No.
Mark Burley's interesting. I'm saying no. But take a little deeper dive into Mark Burley. He's better than you remember. Sin Shu Chu.
Legend, but no.
No. Edwin Encarnacion.
No.
No. Gio Gonzalez.
Who?
You didn't know who that is. Cy Young Award winner. No. Alex Gordon.
No.
Cole Hamels.
Yes.
No. Cole Hamels is interesting. I don't know if it's his first year, but Cole Hamels. It is his first year. He'll be interesting. I think you could talk me into Cole Hamels. Knee-jerk reaction says no. You could easily talk me into Cole Hamels. The King, Felix Hernandez.
Yeah.
If we're letting in Cole Hamels, you got to let in King Felix.
Yeah.
I think those are similar players. Torrey Hunter.
No. Legend, though.
I love Torrey Hunter. Torrey Hunter, was he on it last year? He got 5% last year. He's hanging on a thread. That's a guy that just deserves the credit of being on the ballot for all 10 years. Torrey Hunter's a no. Matt Kemp.
No.
Howie Kendrick should not get a vote. Nick Markakis.
No.
Yeah. Daniel Murphy.
No.
This is an interesting one. It's his first year on the ballot, I'm pretty sure. Maybe he's not. No, he's been on it for 2 years. Dustin Pedroia.
Ooh.
He got 11% last year.
Yeah, put him in.
No. Hunter Pence.
No.
Andy Pettit.
No.
I think I'm in on Andy Pettit.
Really?
I think I'm in on Andy Pettit. Rick Porcello.
No.
Manny Ramirez.
Yes.
Yes. I love Man Ram. Alex Rodriguez.
I mean, if you're in favor of the juice, yeah.
You said Ryan Braun, so if you're not letting
I just said yes.
Okay, I'm just saying. You paused.
Yeah.
Alex Rodriguez is the greatest infielder who's ever played the game. K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez.
Ooh.
I don't know how. It's hard for me to gauge relief pitchers, truly.
Yeah.
And he got 10% last year. He's been on the ballot for 4 years. Like, if we're letting in guys like Bruce Sutter, then why aren't we letting in K-Rod? Like, K-Rod was great. Let in K-Rod. Jimmy Rollins.
Oh, dog. I put Pedroia in. I mean, no.
Jimmy Rollins is no. Chase Utley?
Love him, but no.
Chase Utley, I'm a yes on.
Really?
I'm a yes because he played second base. Omar Vizquel.
No.
Thank you. Thank you for that one. And then you're saying yes on David Wright.
Yeah.
All right. David Wright got 8% last year. So he's holding on. I'm a no for David Wright.
I think I did good besides Ryan Braun. I like my takes besides Ryan Braun.
All right. We got one more. We got a few more questions. Let's go to the last one, and this is how we'll round out the show.
From Victor?
From Victor.
All right, here we go. A lot of the head coaching hires have been defensive guys. Do you think this is a harbinger? Did I say that right? Harbinger? Harbinger?
I don't know. I see it on. I don't know.
Okay. For where the sport is now.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Halfley to defensive guy.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Harbaugh to New York. He's a defensive guy.
Special teams.
He's a defensive guy.
Special teams.
No, special teams. Am I missing any hires so far?
Stefanski. Offensive.
That's an offensive guy to Atlanta. But that's it, right? That's all the hiring that's been done thus far.
Correct.
And listen, 4 years ago, after Sean McVay, after the success that Zac Taylor had, quite honestly, to begin the career, like, we saw that there was a mold, Kyle Shanahan, to get these young offensive guys and pair them with a young quarterback. And that still can work. Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams. Like, that's a pretty successful mold. But I think when it comes to the NFL, because of the constraints, it's a boxing match, right? It's punch, counterpunch, punch, counterpunch. We're going to do this differently. The league adjusts. Now we got to do this differently. Offense is king. Defense is king. And I think we're seeing a kind of sway back to the defensive side. I don't think it's lost on me that these guys, us here in Cincinnati, like, if we fired Zac Taylor, who we'd want is a defensive guy, or at least a good majority of the people we'd be calling for is a defensive guy. I think that is just a mold of where the league is at. We've seen offense rule the day for over a decade. How did passing became king? How did teams respond? Linebackers got smaller. Safeties got smaller and faster. How did the offenses respond? We're going to run the ball a lot more. Now, after we're seeing that, all right, now we're seeing defense kind of rule the. I think it's not lost on me. It's not lost on me that defense is starting to come back in vogue. What about you, Stone?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the teams that are left, I mean, Seattle and Denver, they got some dudes on defense. Houston obviously was in the mix for a long time. It doesn't – I think about like 4 years ago, it was like, dude, hire an offensive guy or you don't know what you're doing. I think it's swung back a little bit. I'm still in favor of the offensive guy over the defensive guy. Like, for example, if Buffalo hired another defensive guy, it's like, what are you doing? Like, they need to hire an offensive guy for Josh Allen. I still think – the majority of the time I'm going offense. I like Halfley a lot. I've got some questions on how that's going to work in Miami. They got a whole lot of work they got to do on both sides of the football. But then you look at, like, Seattle. I mean, that McDonald hire is an unbelievable hire, defensive guy, obviously. Yep. So it doesn't feel as pro-offense as it was like 4 years ago, but there is still a slight lean to offense in my opinion.
The Texans, ever since they hired D'Amico, they've won a postseason game every year, despite the worst quarterback play I've ever seen in my entire life. I think defense is back in vogue. It'll be interesting to see how the punch is countered once again. We'll see defense rule it for a few years, or we'll see these teams. And I think it was one of the questions that we didn't get to. How will we remember this postseason, this NFL? Because I think we remember it. We kind of remember the season. You remember your personal team season, but you remember the postseason and how it all unfolded at the end of it all. And I believe that we will look back at this postseason the same way we look at like 2012 or 2017 or 2002. And what do those all have in common? Those had not great quarterbacks win Super Bowls off of the back of defenses. 2015, it was Peyton Manning, but he was terrible that year for the Broncos. Terrible. And in the middle of the 2010s, what won? The Seahawks won. That Broncos team won. Defense won. So I think we're back into that. I don't know when it's going to flip back. Makes me a little nervous. Makes me a little nervous thinking about the future of our franchise here in town that is predicated on the offense when the league's going another way. But sometimes when everyone else is zigging, you got to zag. And we zagged while everyone else was zagging, but maybe we just held on to the zag for so long. It's when the zig's in vogue, we could just zag our way all the way to the postseason if you guys understood what that last 15 seconds meant whatsoever. We'll see you guys tomorrow. As a mentioned, we're gonna have Luke on. We're gonna have Lukey. He was down there at Miami. Calling the national championship game. We're going to ask about what it's like being a IU during this run. So that'll be fun. And Thursday, we're going to talk about a mystery team in the National League Central. We're going to have a podcaster from one of the mystery teams in the National League Central.
Buccos?
Hey, we'll see. Maybe Cardinals. Wouldn't that be exciting? Wouldn't that be exciting? I don't know. Who it's going to be. What team it's going to be. You'll find out on Thursday. See you guys.
here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Tuesday, January 20th. A bit of a shorter show today. We're going to get out around 11:45. We got a meeting at noon that we got to get ready for. So about a 40-minute show here on a Tuesday. But there is lots that I still want to get to on today's show. And we got to start with the Cincinnati Bengals news. Some more rumors out there circulating about Bengals offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher. He once again is going to interview with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their OC job. We'll talk about that, have some thoughts on that, and we actually did a segment on this. Kind of saw this coming a little bit last week, I believe, about what the Bengals would potentially do at that spot should Dan Pitcher move on to other opportunities. So we're going to break all that down. Also, Tanner Hudson, Bengals getting out in front of that as they bring him back. Absolutely the right call. 1-year deal, I believe. Tight end Tanner Hudson has that rapport with Joe Burrow. Kind of a no-brainer decision, I think, for Cincinnati. And now we're all kind of hoping that Dalton Reisner is the next domino to follow. But we'll talk about that a little bit. And, of course, we have to talk about the national champions, the Indiana Hoosiers, Curt Cignetti, Fernando Mendoza. Unbelievable, right? And, people were talking about, it's the greatest college sports story of all time. True. It's one of the greatest sports stories of all time there as well. You go back to literally 2 years ago, like in 2024 when Cignetti's taken over the program here, and you got facilities that are borderline decrepit. You got a university that has this huge alumni base that doesn't give a you-know-what about the football team. And then 2 years later, they're kings of college football, hoisting the trophy. Unbelievable. And an unbelievable game, too. The whole story is going to be Cignetti and Fern and what they were able to do, defying the odds and winning. But it was a heck of a game, too. And it's been a minute since we've had a great national title game. And that was awesome. Carson Beck, it was there in his hands. Only a 6-point lead, moving the ball a little bit. They were in prime position there. That offense was clicking in the second half to potentially win that game and steal the hearts out of everybody there in Indiana, but ultimately didn't happen. We'll talk about the game. And depending on timing, we'll get into some of these coaching changes here. Worst case, we stash this a little bit for later in the week. But McDermott fired with Buffalo. I've got some thoughts on that. A ton of wins for McDermott in Buffalo, but ultimately did not culminate in a Super Bowl appearance. And when you have Josh Allen, the expectation level certainly is through the ceiling, and he's moving on. And I think he deserves another crack. At being a head coach, right? We talk about that a lot. Bob Saleh getting another crack as he's been named the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, which I do think is a sneaky. We ranked the head coaching openings when on Black Monday or maybe the day after. The Tennessee job isn't as bad as one might think, right? It's not Cleveland and it's not Arizona. It's actually somewhat intriguing, and something tells me that Saleh, heard from Baltimore or had a feeling that he wasn't going to be their guy, and probably not going to be Buffalo's guy either, right? As you would think they'd pivot to offense with McDermott on the way out. So I think this is a pretty good opportunity for Robert Saleh, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And Jeff Hafley going to be taking over as the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins. But that's all on tap today. Again, got to get out a little bit early here on today's show. Got a meeting at noon, but we're still going to be here for about 40 minutes or so. So help us out. Hit that thumbs up icon. Like the stream if you haven't done so already. And, of course, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, right? I understand everyone's busy. You don't have the time to hang out with us every day from 11 to noon while we're live on YouTube. But the podcast, help us out. Download the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Trying to get those numbers up. And, of course, check out our segments on YouTube and clips on social media there as well at StoneShields_. You can find me at CBox Sports, as, of course, our Chatterbox Sports page. And at the Stone Shields, you will find our show on Twitter. Also up on Instagram now at the Stone Shield Show. But looking forward to a great show here on Tuesday. And let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, we touched on this last week. Something tells me that there's a world here where Dan Pitcher is out. Pitcher, of course, has only interviewed for one head coaching spot, and that is division rival Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns have brought Dan Pitcher in for an interview. They're going through lots of candidates. I think most teams should do that when they have openings, right? We saw the Dallas Cowboys interview 3 guys, and then they're like, yeah, we'll just, promote Shoddy, right? But, most serious organizations, not that the Browns are a serious organization, but they should be going through a lot of different names, and it would be borderline surprising, I think, if Dan Pitcher landed that job. And I'm kind of surprised, honestly, he hasn't gotten more traction than what he has over the past couple of years, right? This is a Marvin guy. He was here before Zac Taylor kind of was one of the only guys that stayed through the transition and really just worked his way up, built that rapport with Zac Taylor, eventually became the quarterback's coach. And then when Callahan was out, he became the offense coordinator. I think he's done a terrific job, right? And it's kind of going under the radar a little bit because, of course, he is not calling the plays. And there is some risk for Dan Pitcher if he were to leave just to call plays for a different team. But I think Tampa is about as risk-free as it gets, right? And that, of course, is where Dan Pitcher has interviewed. He interviewed there last year as well. They made a change at that OC spot, and now he's going to be interviewing again with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Brian Callahan also has interviewed with them, so we'll touch on him as well there in a second. But when you look at Tampa, right, I was kind of the mind that they should have moved off of Todd Bowles, right? But they decided to keep him, and he's going to be back. He's won a lot of games. He's won, some division championships. He, of course, was there overseeing the defense when Tom Brady was winning a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. And you look at some of the guys that they've had calling plays, there's been some success, right? Liam Cohen. Year with Baker, he's the head coach of the Jaguars, looks like a future star. Prior to that, it was Dave Canales, right? He takes the job in Carolina. It's been a little bit rough, but shoot, they made the playoffs and we're a play away from beating the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to be competing in the NFC Championship this weekend, right? So Canales, Cohen, there's a foundation there, and there's a quarterback in place, right? None of us are going to sit here and say Baker Mayfield's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. We understand that. Baker Mayfield is a winning quarterback. And I'll even go as far as to say you can win a world championship with Baker Mayfield. He's a really, really good player, right? And you couple it with some of the pieces they have offensively, some of the guys, the young guys that they've drafted in that room, McMillan certainly, and Ibuka look like two studs. And then you got some wily veterans in there as well as Mike Evans, who, in my opinion, is the most underrated player of my generation, and Chris Godwin in that room as well. So if you go to Tampa, you're probably going to have some success. And maybe if they offer him the job, Pitcher will view that as a better opportunity to get him a head coaching job, as opposed to staying here in Cincinnati with Zac Taylor and with Joe Burrow, but ultimately not being the quote-unquote play caller, right? So we'll see. We'll see how that transpires. I kind of feel like if they were to offer it to him, he would leave. And then the question becomes, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, what do you do at that offensive coordinator spot? And we threw around some names last week on the show, right? The Brian Daybals of the world and some of these other bigger names. You promote Brad Craigthorpe, right? Your quarterback's coach. But what was the one name that we landed on? And we're like, this is going to be the guy. The same name that Paul Dehner Jr. and others have discussed for the Cincinnati Bengals. Just don't overthink this is kind of the way I look at it. Brian Callahan. And there's some people out there that say, Stone, come on. Right? You want to sit here, you want to keep Zac Taylor, you want to bring everybody back, and now you're just going to bring in a guy that was your OC for a while. Well, you also have to understand what the Bengals' word of the offseason is, right? Continuity, and it's going to drive all of us insane if it hasn't already, but they're going to keep leaning on it, right? Continuity. We want to keep this thing together. We've had success on the offensive side of the ball. We're not going to blow this thing up. We're close. We're not that far away, right? Well, one thing I'm confident about in Brian Callahan is he can do a good job as the offensive coordinator, and he did a great job as the offensive coordinator here with Zac Taylor, and they're great friends on top of it as well. And when he took the job in Tennessee, the way he spoke at the Cincinnati Bengals and the organization, our opinions, kind of a laughing stock of an organization. Well, that's not how Callahan talked about it. He kind of talked about it almost revering the Bengals organization and expressing his gratitude for Zac Taylor and the Brown family and Tobin and everybody involved. And him coming back, I think, is basically as close to a guarantee as it could get, if, of course, Dan Pitcher were to leave at some point this offseason. And like I said, they had the success, right? The Super Bowl, the AFC Championship run there as well. And I think the biggest reason why I would be a proponent of bringing back Callahan is this, right? What have I talked about all year long with the New England Patriots, right? They're going to be a problem for a long time. Even if they lose to Denver somehow to Stidham or lose in the Super Bowl to Seattle or Los Angeles, they're going to be a problem for a long time. Why? They hit the head coach out of the park, right? He's not going anywhere, right? As long as he wants to continue coaching. He's not getting fired. He's not leaving for another job. Vrabel's going to be their guy for a long time. Drake May, right? Might not win it this year again, but he clearly is the franchise quarterback. He's clearly going to go through his contract. They're going to pick up his fifth-year option. They're going to give him a big money contract. That is inevitable at this point. There's no world, I don't think, where that doesn't happen. But the third piece to that puzzle is Josh McDaniels, right? Josh McDaniels is not going to be a head coach somewhere else. He's already done that. And it blew up in the faces of Denver, of Indianapolis when he changed his mind, and then, of course, in Vegas. It just did not work, right? There's these other guys, right, that you could get. You want to bring in a Brian Daboll, fine. He's going to be here for a year, and then he's going to take a head job. You want to bring in one of these other offensive coordinator candidates that they're going to be thinking about getting another job, right? Bob Saleh. We talk about some of these guys getting second opportunities. Mike McDaniel is going to get a second opportunity. I would be shocked if Brian Callahan got a second opportunity as a head coach in this league. He won a handful of games. And look, he was in a mess of a situation in Tennessee. Didn't have a lot of help. It was a bad roster. The quarterback position was in flux, right? But he only won a handful of games, and it was pretty ugly, and they got blown out a lot. So I don't think Callahan is going anywhere as far as the head coaching position goes. So if you were to bring back Brian Callahan, I think there's a world where it's Callahan, Taylor, and Burrow for Burrow's career, or certainly Burrow's prime, right? Now, if they continue to underachieve and miss the playoffs, eventually Zac will be gone. But, I think there's a world where Cincinnati, if Joe Burrow's out there for 17 games, they expect to be in the postseason each and every year. And as we all know as a fan base, we feel pretty good about them, regardless of what seed they are when they're in the playoffs, right? Now, maybe that mood can change, right? If we see them win the division next year and then they're a one and done, we might all of a sudden be like, okay, this isn't just, get in and the Bengals are going to go on some run, right? It's just what we're used to with 21 and 22. It's like, yeah, get in and they'll win games, right? But, there's no guarantee that could continue. But I think their whole thing is continuity, right? Continuity. Well, if you bring back Callahan, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to be a head coach at another spot. So to me, I'm not going to say that's some slam dunk outside the park bomb, grand slam. No, it's not. People are going to probably roll their eyes at it, to be honest with you. That's what Reed Mouse was doing off the bench. He's like, can we just do something different for once? Can we go out and get somebody, right? Can we not just promote from within or bring back an old guy that got fired and now we want to bring him back? I understand that. I understand the frustration. But their whole thing, right, keeping the band together, continuity, we're so close. I mean, that would just kind of feed right into that mindset. And obviously Callahan and Taylor are great friends. Burrow, of course, has spoken very highly of Callahan. They've had success together. And like I said, there's no world where Callahan's going to get another opportunity to be a head coach, in my opinion. So I think he would fit back in here rather easily, right? I've been surprised. I thought Pitcher would get more love as far as head coaching goes. But, when you're not a play caller, technically, you don't have your hat you can necessarily hang on that. It can present some challenges for you. But at some point, Pitcher is not going to be the OC here for Cincinnati, right? He's a young guy. By all accounts, his leadership's great. The way he commands these meeting rooms, you hear about it from those around the organization. It's only a matter of time before he gets a crack at this thing, right? But there's a world where he's like, you know what? I love it here in Cincinnati, but, I only got one interview, and it was with Cleveland, who has a history of just kind of taking Bengals guys and interviewing them, right? I'm going to go to Tampa here, be the offensive coordinator, and then kind of go from there, right, and have a great year with Baker Mayfield, then potentially be a head coach somewhere else. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if that were to happen. But, there's other teams with interest in Brian Callahan. Funnily enough, Tampa Bay is one of those teams, right? Tampa Bay, he has interviewed with Tampa Bay, and he's also interviewed with the Los Angeles Chargers. So, there's a world where the Chargers hire him, the Buccaneers hire Pitcher, and then you're sitting there like, okay, then what do we do, right? I think, a promotion for Brad Craigthorpe certainly would be in play, and we've also thrown around some other names as well. Dayball certainly at the top of that list if he isn't able to land a job. But it's kind of a sneaky offseason thing that people need to monitor, I think, around this team, because a lot of us are sitting here, we're talking about the defense and we're turning the page of the draft or whatever. There's a potential that the Bengals have a huge, huge role to fill as far as who that next offense coordinator is. And I feel like in this town sometimes it takes the back seat because we're like, whatever, the coordinator, whatever, Taylor's calling the plays. I understand that, but the offensive coordinator, even here in Cincinnati, plays a huge role to the success of the Bengals. And, if you remove Pitcher from this equation and you throw some bum into that spot, this offense doesn't look the way it has looked, even with Taylor and Burrow when he's healthy in place. So I think Pitcher's not getting quite enough credit. I think he deserves a little bit more credit. And, this is not a situation where it's like, yeah, we'll go to Tennessee and call the plays, right? Like, if you go to Tampa Bay and call the plays, like, there's a structure there. There's a foundation there. You can win there. You got a quarterback there. So I don't see him, leaving for – maybe the Chargers, shoot, he has an interview with the Chargers, but maybe the Chargers say, hey, we've interviewed Callahan, let's talk to another Bengals guy, let's talk to Dan Pitcher, right? But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I feel like if they would have offered him last year, he was ready to go. So if a team offers him and wants to give up play calling and it's a spot where there's a quarterback in place, i.e. Tampa Bay or Los Angeles, wouldn't surprise me at all if Pitcher left, and then Zac Taylor will be looking to fill that position. And then otherwise, a staff that's basically all coming back, right? It's pretty much the same exact staff for next year, and that could be a major shift if Dan Pitcher, of course, ends up leaving and they have to fill that spot. But kind of a story that not many people are talking about, but certainly a very interesting story there as well. Before we move on to the Hoosiers, another Bengals news item here. Tanner Hudson is signing an extension. He's going to be back with this team. That was kind of a no-brainer to me. I know some people, they look at Tanner Hudson and all they remember is 2 years ago, week 1, the fumble against the Patriots that ultimately lost them the game. I understand that, but Tanner Hudson's been a really good player for this team, right? Came in, kind of bounced around a lot, was in Tampa for a while, but has built a great relationship with Joe Burrow, and he's been really good against zone coverage too, which is huge because teams like to do that a lot to Cincinnati. They're kind of scared always to, play man, as they should be, against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So the Bengals see a lot of zone. He's done a great job of finding the soft spots of the zone. The catch against Baltimore on Thanksgiving was unbelievable. I don't think any of us thought that he was capable of making a catch like that, but he's clearly got some athleticism. And clearly that room, if you're the Bengals, James Casey, tight ends coach, has done a tremendous job. That room's in a great spot. Right? Would you love to have a guy that's like a Gronk that can block and catch? Sure, but that's just not, or a Kittle, right? That's not really the way it is these days. So you got to have some guys that are blockers. You got to have some guys that are pass catchers. And Gesicki is obviously your one as a pass catcher, but you feel really good about Tanner Hudson being like your second pass-catching tight end. And we'll see, if Eric All comes back after the 2 ACL surgeries and he's healthy, ready to go, maybe Hudson doesn't see as much time this year, but it's a cheap deal. It's a team-friendly deal. And, the Bengals, does it really help them out getting ahead of this thing early, right? It's not like Tanner Hudson later in free agency was going to, deserve some big-time contract. No, but it was good to see, check off the box. He should be back with this team. Keep it rolling there at that tight end spot. Good on third down. Good against zone coverage. Burrow likes him. Burrow trusts him. He's a, guy that fits into your tight end room. Do you want him out there for every snap? Absolutely not. Right? But when you have the tight ends that you have in place, I just think he fits in perfect. Sample's your blocking guy. Good things happen when he's on the field, really. Gesicki is basically your slot receiver, who's great. And then you have Tanner Hudson, and we'll see what Eric All can bring to the equation there as well. But the tight end room for the Bengals is set for next year, and that certainly is a very positive thing. And now we all sit back and we're like, okay, Dalton Reisner, when are we going to get this deal done with him? Because that's not something you want to take to free agency, right? You have the opportunity here at this point to take care of that now. Move off of that now, right? Check it off your off-season list, right? Because that's when we look at this offense and we evaluate this offense, and I know I just talked about them potentially needing to find a new coordinator, but from a personnel perspective, like, sign Reisner and then maybe, draft a couple of offensive linemen, but you're good, right? It's literally all of your time, effort, and energy can go towards your defense once you check off that guard spot there. And hopefully Cincinnati is able to do that there with Dalton Reisner. But one little news item there. Tanner Hudson's back, 1-year deal, I believe, and that's the right decision for Cincinnati. Absolutely. Easy decision and good execution there from the Bengals. All right, let's talk Indiana Hoosiers. They are national champions, and it's unbelievable what they were able to do. I said this at the top of the show. People were talking about, it's the greatest turnaround in college sports history. Well, yeah, but it's one of the best turnarounds in sports history, period. Right? This is a 2-year thing. Cignetti came in to Indiana, which is historically the losingest program in college football history, comes in from James Madison and wins immediately. Immediately wins, right? Loses the one game in the regular season to Ohio State, which, okay, on the road, okay. And then, plays Notre Dame in the playoffs and loses there. But an outstanding year one, right? And then a lot of people are like, that was kind of cute, right? What a run for Cignetti. Google him, ha, ha, ha. And then here they go into year 2, and they don't lose. They don't lose a game, right? 16-0. And it's not like they're just playing a bunch of bums. Like, they had to go through a borderline gauntlet. I know Penn State was a joke, right? But they were, they're preseason number 1 team, right? And they went on the road to a very difficult place to play, and they hadn't completely fallen apart yet at that time. Huge win for Mendoza on the road, beating Ohio State. I sat here on this show and said, this might be the best college team that I have ever seen. Obviously, now you laugh at that. It's like, oh, they lost their last 2 games. They won a postseason game. They stink, right? But that win against Ohio State, if you look at the box score, it doesn't say much. Kind of like if you look at the box score last night, doesn't say much. Right? But what Mendoza was able to do is unbelievable in these games. They win that game against Ryan Day when nobody thought they had a chance, right? And then there was people saying, congrats, they're the 1 overall seed, but they got to play Bama. Obviously, it's not Nick Saban Bama. It's a totally different team, not even close, right? But they didn't just beat Bama. They beat the tar out of the Crimson Tide, beat the brakes off them. That game wasn't even close, right? And then they go off after that. It's like, Oregon, they probably got a shot. Dan Lanning, right? He knows what he's doing. Not even close, right? Not even close. And then last night, where it's like, how would this team How would they perform when they were in a difficult spot, right? When it was close, when there was high leverage, high pressure moments. Well, they've been there, right? Look back at the regular season, the Penn State game, the Iowa game. That was a tough, close, physical Big Ten game. They leaned back on those experiences last night, and it ultimately propelled them to the top. So the conversation around this game is going to be Indiana, Cignetti. How did he do it? What a story. But when you just focus on the game itself, it was a tremendous game, right? We haven't seen a national championship game that good in quite some time. Right? I mean, that was anybody's game there. I mean, especially early, it kind of felt like Indiana was dominating, but you look up and it's like, well, it's a 10-point game, right? It's really anybody's game here at this point. And, Carson Beck, I give him some credit, not for much, but for just kind of responding, right? It's like, well, Indiana, they went up 2 scores, they're going to win it. And then he would take him down the field and he would score. And he deserves some credit for that. But I don't know if he's a draftable guy, which is embarrassing for him. Because, he's got the size, he's mobile enough, he's got a solid arm. But, I mean, the body language from Carson Beck just stunk in this game. It's like he's sitting over there pouting on the sideline. It's like, bro, you're down 1 score to the best team in the country, and you're playing at your place at home. Like, wake up, snap out of it. Like, let's go. And, his performance did that for a while and ultimately loses the game on the pick. But I don't like Carson Beck, dude. Like, what are you doing? I get you're, going 3 and out a lot. You're punting. You're frustrated, whatever. Like, your season championship glory is right in front of your face, and you're gonna like pout about it and roll your eyes and be a bad teammate and shake your head at coach. Like, what in the world are you doing? And then after the game, he doesn't shake hands with anybody on Indiana. Like, that dude's a complete mess, right? So I don't know. This is a guy that a couple years ago people were talking about number 1 overall pick. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. The guy that just beat him, Fern, is going number 1. But, like, is Carson Beck a draftable guy? I don't know, because we all know the off-the-field stuff. You don't like that if you're an NFL team looking to bring him in as a quarterback. But, yeah, he's got some work to do. As he was supposed to be sits behind Stetson Bennett, has these expectations, and he played fine at Georgia. Again, I've said this before on the show. I think he got too much criticism for some of the shortcomings of those Georgia teams. And then, what he was able to do, the playoff run here, didn't play great throughout, but the Ole Miss game late was great, and then he had some great moments late in this game and the championship as well before ultimately the interception. But Carson Beck, I don't know what's going on there. But, maybe Miami can be back. I don't know how you're going to reload there on the defensive line, because that was the reason they were in this game. I thought Shanahan and Indiana were maybe a little bit too conservative. I understand Fernando got popped early in that game, which I agree with Cignetti. Like, one of those has to be a foul. They didn't flag any of them. But they kind of were stubborn trying to run the ball there with Hemby, which, they had some success doing it. Ultimately, it's kind of what won them the game, right, as they were able to pick up some, they 3rd and 6, and they'd run it, and sometimes they would get it. They did punt a lot in the game there as well, but I thought they were a little bit stubborn with the run, but shoot, it worked out. And they won the game. But that front for Miami, man, is ferocious, right? Bain, I looked at him as kind of a top 10 lock. Well, now you might be talking about him as a top 5 lock there with Ruben Bain. And then Mesidor, he might not be a first rounder, but he feels like a top 40 pick. I know he's older, and NFL teams are a little bit worried about that. But and even on the interior as well, they got dudes. It's like, holy cow, they got NFL guys all over the place. And understand that Indiana offensive line has been the best offensive line in college football. Like, there's NFL guys on that Indiana offensive line, and they were getting bullied for much of that game there as well. So that front for Miami is ferocious. Are they going to be able to rebuild like that along the defensive line? I don't know. They obviously got to figure out quarterback, what they're going to do there. Malachi Toney is maybe the most electric player in college football. He's awesome. He had some great moments in the game. Again, I give Beck credit for getting him back into it, and they kind of left the run a little bit there when they had to in the second half, but they had some huge runs from Fletcher, who's a dog there as well. But I give Miami credit for hanging in there. I didn't think it was going to be this competitive. But, ultimately they had a chance there at the end, and Carson Beck throws an interception. And I don't know if he thought it was one-on-one coverage there on the outside. The safety was kind of cheating that way, and he just kind of threw it up, right? And there was still time when he made that decision. Like, I understand doing that if there's like 12 seconds left and you need it right then. That wasn't the case, and just a huge mistake for Carson Beck as he cost his team an opportunity of winning a national title there at that point, which would have been crazy. Would have been just just unbelievable heartbreak for the Hoosiers if they play that game and you feel like that they played great, but they played well enough, and then for Carson Beck to potentially steal it there at the end as they only had the 6-point lead there, of course, that would have just been a disaster for the Indiana faithful. But some huge plays from Mendoza. We'll talk about him, for a second here. Again, you look at the box score, you look at the stat sheet, you're like, okay, like that, you didn't play that well. Fernando Mendoza proved. I didn't think he really needed to do anything in this game to prove it, but he is surefire, number 1 overall pick. If you're the Vegas Raiders, you can't move off that spot. You need a quarterback. There's your guy right there, Fernando Mendoza. Is he going to be Josh Allen or Joe Burrow? I'm not going to get that carried away, but he is a starting quarterback in the National Football League that you can win some games with. So the head coaching hire that Vegas makes, they have to be very careful about how they do that, and they can't miss, right? Like they took Pete Carroll, and I'm a Pete Carroll guy. I like Pete Carroll a lot, coaching legend. But, like, that didn't work at all. Like, he's in his 70s. Like, that didn't work. You need a younger guy, an offensive guy to come in here and help Fernando Mendoza, especially in that division. Bo Nix, Sean Payton, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Herbert Harbaugh. Like, holy cow, that is a difficult division, and he needs a coach to come in and help him. But the toughness that he showed, right? I mean, I bet Tom Brady was there and Spytek was there, the GM of the Raiders, and I bet they just were loving that. As he got hit right in the mouth early, and he's bleeding from the lip, and he just pops up, no issues. No issues whatsoever for Mendoza. And some huge plays on third down. Like, again, the whole story's going to be, oh, Indiana, what a story, what a run. Like, they had to make some gutsy plays in this game to win. Like, they were very close to losing this game, right? And I feel like that's going to go kind of under the radar a little bit, just how great they had to play in big-time moments. How about Becker? Like, I mean, my goodness, the plays that he made, 2 like back shoulder, difficult catches, good coverage from the Miami defender. That guy's a stud. That's their 3. Right? You got Surratt and you got Cooper, and then this Charlie Becker kid's unbelievable. He's unreal. And the plays that he made in the game were tremendous. And then, the dive, that's going to be somewhere at the Indiana facility. Shoot me, they might even make a statue of that somehow. But, the gutsy call from Cignetti. And, he did this twice where it's like, well, he burned a timeout, not super late in the game, but late in the game, it's like, well, you're burning your timeouts. You're not sending the field goal unit out there, right? Because that's the worst thing you can do as a coach is sit there when you have a short field goal and sit there and then say, I'm going to burn a timeout here late in the game and then say, we're not going. I'm just going to kick it, right? Like a 5-yard penalty, that's not going to affect your field goal that drastically when you're close, right? So if you're calling timeout, if you're burning that timeout, you better go. Cignetti did it twice. And the quarterback draw, because I'm watching this game, and they kept trying to run it up the middle, varying degrees of success. Again, Hemby had some big ones, some clutch ones, but they didn't really run it great. And I'm sitting there going, Mendoza, he killed Oregon in moments. Again, he's not going to run 10, 12 times a game, but he's going to run in big spots, and he hadn't ran at all in the game last night against Miami. I'm like, God, they got to utilize that a little bit, especially here in short yardage. And then they brought it out at the perfect time. They were saving it all game. Just genius from Cignetti, Shanahan, those guys. And they said, yep, 4th and 5 where we need it the most to go up 2 scores. We're going quarterback draw. He did it. It was blocked beautifully. He did have to make a couple of guys miss there as well. And then the second effort, taking the huge shot, crossing the goal line. That moment will live in Indiana history forever. Just an all-time moment. Again, shows his toughness there. That was the most inaccurate I ever saw Mendoza with the football. But again, he's got an NFL front with guys in his face getting hit all game. So I was really impressed with how he played. Surefire number 1 pick. And just a great performance from him. A heck of a year from him. Heisman, great story. 2-star guy, right? Couldn't even get a preferred walk-on at Miami, which he grew up 2 miles away from there. Ends up going to Cal. Has some success a little bit. Makes a name for himself. Doesn't win a ton of games. Cignetti, Cignetti as an evaluator, too. Like, he's a great head coach, but, like, he's the GM here, too. And that's what it is in college football. And, like, to land these guys and to understand the value, like, to know Mendoza was going to be that good from Cal. Like, at Cal, he was solid. But to know he was going to come in here and be this, unbelievable scouting from Cignetti. And Mendoza did a tremendous job throughout the course of the season. Hats off to him. What a year for Fernando Mendoza. And, it is funny. At the very end, they get the pick right after Beck throws the pick, but where the defender went down, it's like, well, you're kind of in a precarious spot here. And against that front, Fowler and Herbstreit, who, of course, do a tremendous job, they're already talking about, Indiana being champions or whatever. And I'm sitting there like, you got to get 2 snaps off here in this spot. And they took the knee on the first one, and then Mendoza was out of room, which is safety would have been fine, as long as the clock, of course, had expired. But, you're worried about losing the ball. Like, if you can't execute a snap, they're going to land on the football in the end zone and win, right? So I'm sitting there like, here we go, like holding on for dear life here. And then they snuck it. Mendoza obviously was able to hold on to the ball, and that was it. But imagine that. Like, nobody even really talked about that. Like, I mean, if you fumble this snap, like, you're going to lose, right? Like, they're going to pick it up in the end zone. You're going to lose. But that obviously didn't happen. Indiana wins. Heck of a job. And the main takeaway also from Indiana and I was thinking about this too. Like, I'm not saying they would beat an NFL team. I think that's the dumbest thing that sports fans do is when they're like, oh, this great college team would beat an NFL team. I think it's ridiculous 99.9% of the time. But I think they're the best team in football, right? There's not a better team, right? Just quarterback, special teams, offense, defense, coaching. Like, they check off every single box. They can run it. They can block. They got a quarterback. They coach. Their special teams is elite. We'll talk about that play in a second, right? And, they're tough. They're physical. They tackle well. They tackle so well. There were so many opportunities in that game where on third down, Beck would complete a pass, and then somebody, Tony or whoever, would have it. And it's like, oh, they just got to, make this one guy not even necessarily miss, but like the ability to fall forward, and you're going to pick up a first down. And like Fisher and these boys defensively for Indiana are like, no, we're actually right when we contact you, we're going to bring you down. And there was multiple times early in that game where it's like 4th and 2 at your own 30, and you're like, we got to punt. We got to punt. And, of course, there was, one drive there at the end of the first half, which credit to Chris Ball. He went for it deep in his own territory, kind of shades of what Alabama did in the Rose Bowl. But, of course, Mario was able to have some success there on that play, and they went down the field and obviously ended up missing the field goal going into halftime down 10. But that was an aggressive decision there from Cristobal, and Cignetti had that look on his face again when they were going for it, which was pretty funny. But just all three phases, brilliant. They check every single box, and as time goes on, we can have the debates. There's some people that will roll their eyes and say, okay, they're not better than 19 LSU. It's a hypothetical. We'll never know, but they won an extra game, right? I mean, that Ohio State team that they beat is insane, and the team they just beat in the Natty just beat Ohio State a couple of weeks prior. So, I don't know. I'm open to having that conversation, right? I think the 20 Bama group certainly belongs in that conversation as well, but this is one of the best teams we have seen of all time. And then special teams, that ends up being the difference in the game. The blocked punt. Right? I mean, just coming off the edge, and the personal protector just wasn't able to get any sort of momentum or a push or a jab on the guy coming around the corner. And, it ends up getting blocked, lands right there in the end zone, you land on it, and that was the difference in the game, right? So just the attention to detail from Cignetti and those guys, like, that's just an attention to detail play. Obviously, they're backed up, and nobody's thinking, punt block for a touchdown in that spot. And then he just comes flying off the edge. James Madison guy, right? Lots of these dudes, James Madison dudes that just Cignetti believed in and was able to coach, right, and make good players. And, like, some of these guys are great college players and were part of this outstanding college team, but they're not even going to be thought of as draft picks, right? But just what he was able to get out of this group, every ounce of talent was able to come out. And it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable what he was able to do, Cignetti, and the journey in which he got there. I can't imagine making $300,000 as Nick Saban's assistant. And look, some people would say, oh, that's got to be easy. Make it. No. If you're on Nick Saban's staff, there ain't nothing about it that's easy. However, it's job security, and that's a lot of money. And this was years ago, too, right? $300,000, and then he's going to go to his wife and his family, who they had kids in college at the time, and is like, yeah, we're going to leave Nick Saban. We're going to leave all this winning. We're going to leave this paycheck, and I'm going to go take a head job at IUP. I don't even know what that stands for, right? And make, like $200,000 less or $150,000 less to be the head coach. Like, that is absurd to bet on yourself like that. He did, wins there, eventually gets the James Madison job, wins there, and of course the rest is history. Just unbelievable. And people laughed at him for the Google me thing. I do think it's funny. He said it like once and then it became some thing. It's not like he says it every time he's in front of a microphone. But he proved everybody wrong. And this isn't a one-off, right? I'm not going to say they're going to rat off national titles, but I mean, for now, this is the Sig 10. And then the Big 10. This is the Sig 10 as he runs this. And we're going to see some great battles between him and Ryan Day over the course of the next few years. There's always going to be, could he leave for another job? He's not going anywhere, right? He is not going anywhere. He's not an NFL guy at all. Like, he doesn't, not even a little bit strike me as an NFL guy. So he's never going to take an NFL job. In this day and age of college football, at the age in which he's at, like, this would have been his year to go take the Penn State job or try to get in the mix for the LSU job or the Florida job. He's got no interest in that. He's going to go with everything he's got here at Indiana for probably the next 5-ish years And it wouldn't surprise me if it resulted in another national title because it just unbelievable stuff from Curt Cignetti. All right, we got about 4 minutes here. Again, we got to get out of here early. If you're just joining us, got a meeting at about noon here at Chatterbox. But I want to spend a second on McDermott, and we'll save the Salah Hafley stuff for tomorrow. To me, this wasn't shocking. We talked about it certainly before the Jacksonville game. Like, hey, if they lose this game, McDermott's in serious trouble. When you have a quarterback in place that is that good, getting to the playoffs and winning a playoff game or two is not where you're at. And it's crazy. It is crazy to say that, and I don't even feel right saying it. Right? Like to sit up here and say, yes, McDermott should have lost his job. I can't even say that. But I just understand Buffalo making that decision because they're looking here at Josh Allen. They're going, we go to the playoffs every year. Right? And we pretty much win a playoff game every single year. We've been in the AFC title game twice. But he turns 30 here coming up. And Josh Allen, he says he wants to do it for a long time. So he's got probably 10 years, I would say, left. Maybe he'll go longer. We see it with Brady and Rodgers. I don't know if the playing style of Allen is going to result in that. But I would say he's got about 10 years. But as far as his prime goes, he's got about 4 or 5 seasons max, I would say, for his prime. And they're like, well, we've been doing this thing for McDermott for a while, and it hasn't worked out. So we got to make a change, right? And that's what they're going to do. I mean, you look at some of these numbers. 9 seasons, McDermott at the helm. He took over a franchise that hadn't won a playoff game in 18 years. So there's going to be a narrative around McDermott that, like, he failed or whatever. No. His tenure in Buffalo was an overwhelming success. He took over. They hadn't won a playoff game in 18 years, right? He goes 98-50 over those 9 years. And that win percentage is good enough for the 15th best of all time, NFL history. Right? Made the playoffs 8 of those times, won the division 5 of those times, was here for 9 years, and more than 50% of the time, he's winning the division and played in the AFC title game twice. So he won playoff games. It's not like he was Marvin Lewis or Mike Tomlin here recently where it's like, oh, we got him, but we got blown out immediately. No, he's getting in and he's winning playoff games. Obviously, 4 losses to Mahomes. It's going to haunt them. They had some really good teams those years too. But like this year, I've said it a million times, this year's team was not a Super Bowl team. Now, because of Josh Allen's brilliance, they had an opportunity to eventually be a Super Bowl team. But people are killing Josh Allen right now. I can't get it. They had no business beating the Jaguars. No business. That Jacksonville team was way better, right? They won that game because of Josh Allen, right? So there's a lot of changes that they need to make. I think McDermott, he should get another crack at this thing. I mean, that unbelievable stuff what he did in Buffalo. Did he reap the benefits of having Josh Allen? Yeah, but that's what it is, right? You do a good job. Maybe he was involved with that draft pick. I don't know. I think that's why being the GM is in place, which this kind of contradicts some of my other takes, right? Because I talk about not liking the half-in, half-out thing with GMs, right? Like New York, Joe Shane, what are you doing? Still in place. But the Bean stuff, it's like if you pick Josh Allen, right? You didn't pick Joe Burrow, right? You didn't pick the guy that won the Heisman Trophy, won the national title, and then everybody was like, yeah, pick him. You picked the guy from Wyoming, right? You picked the guy from Wyoming. That's a big-time pick, right? So that kind of a selection is like, it gives you job security for a while, I think. So I'm not necessarily opposed to being staying, but you look at some of the roster construction around him, it hasn't been good enough. They got to figure out receiver. They got to shore up the defense. They have a running back in Cook, but, at some point, he's going to age, right? So they got to capitalize. I understand. I feel bad for McDermott. It's the nature of the business. He'll get another job. DC immediately should get another head coaching job eventually, right? He's younger than he looks. He's still, got plenty of juice. But it's just the nature of this league, right? You're in a spot where you had opportunities with Josh Allen, and they got to go in a different direction. It'll be fascinating to see what they do. I said the Baltimore job is the best job. Clearly, I'm off that now, and the Buffalo job's now open in addition to the Baltimore job. This is the best job. Opportunity to work with Josh Allen. I wonder if Harbaugh's kicking himself at all for taking the Giants job early, or Stefanski certainly for taking the Atlanta job early. But we'll see what they do. You would think offense, and then you would think, if you just promote Joe Brady, that doesn't really move the needle, right? I mean, Joe Brady has been fine, but the past couple of years haven't been great. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. Davis Webb is a guy to monitor, 30 years of age, works with the Broncos staff, has a relationship with Josh Allen. So it'll be interesting. But you feel for McDermott. He won a ton, deserves another opportunity. But you're looking at Josh Allen going, all right, he's 30 years old. We got about 4 or 5 years left of his prime, and we got to get a Super Bowl Bowl here. And I've said it all week. I'll continue to say it all offseason. He will win one at some point. That's just the way it is, right? Look at John Elway. Took him till the end of his career before he got his, right? Look at Matthew Stafford. Took him towards the end of his career before he got his. Josh Allen's going to have multiple more opportunities, and a player of that caliber, you give him a solid defense here one of these years and some weapons, he's going to win a Super Bowl at some point. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. An abbreviated, they're out of here about, 15 minutes early here today. Got a meeting coming up at noon, but that segment on Pitcher will be out later today on YouTube. Also, podcasts. Help us out. Leave us a 5-star review. That really does go a long way. So even if you don't listen to the podcast, if you're here with us live, that's great. We appreciate you. Find the podcast, iHeart, Spotify, Apple. Leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate the heck out of you. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll have some guests here throughout the remainder of the week. Appreciate everyone as always. And until then, take care, everybody.